The early 19th century was a tumultuous time in world history. Napoleon Bonaparte's France was locked in a deadly struggle with Great Britain for dominance in Europe. These global conflicts cast long shadows, impacting even the fledgling United States of America. The US, still in its infancy, found itself caught in the crossfire of these European power struggles. Its desire to assert its independence and protect its economic interests put it on a collision course with Great Britain. This conflict would erupt into what we know today as the War of 1812. The United States in 1812 was a nation still finding its footing. Barely 3 decades removed from its hard-won independence from Great Britain, it remained a divided nation. The Federalist Party, dominant in the northeast, favoured closer ties with Great Britain and a cautious approach to foreign policy. They viewed war as a threat to the nation's stability and economic well-being. In contrast, the Democratic Republican Party, led by figures like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, championed westward expansion and a more assertive foreign policy. They saw the British actions as an affront to American honor and a threat to its future. The southern and western states, eager for land and expansion, largely supported this view. As tensions escalated, the United States found itself on an increasingly inevitable path to war. Diplomatic efforts to resolve the issues of impressment, trade restrictions, and British support for Native Americans proved futile. The British, preoccupied with their war against Napoleon, failed to address American concerns with the seriousness demanded by the situation. Public opinion in the United States, particularly in the South and West, increasingly favored war. The grievances against Great Britain, fueled by incidents like the Chesapeake Leopard affair, stoked the flames of resentment. In this incident, a British warship attacked an American frigate, further inflaming anti-British sentiment. In June 1812, President James Madison, after much deliberation and facing mounting pressure from the war hawks within his own party, finally asked Congress to declare war on Great Britain. The declaration passed, marking the beginning of the War of 1812. The United States, still a young and untested nation, was once again at war with its former colonial master. The United States entered the War of 1812 with high hopes but a flawed strategy. The plan relied heavily on capturing Canada, then a sparsely populated British colony. American leaders believed that taking Canada would force Britain to negotiate, especially given its preoccupation with Napoleon in Europe. However, this underestimated both British resolve and the logistical challenges of invading a vast territory. The initial American offensives into Canada were met with humiliating defeats. Poorly trained and equipped American troops were no match for the experienced British regulars and their Native American allies. The surrender of Fort Detroit without a fight dealt a severe blow to American morale and emboldened the British. The year 1813 saw the war shift to the Great Lakes, a crucial theater that would determine the fate of the American invasion of Canada. Control of the lakes was paramount, as it dictated the movement of troops and supplies. Both sides raced to build and outfit warships, transforming the Great Lakes into a battleground unlike any other. Under the leadership of Captain Oliver Hazard Perry, the Americans constructed a fleet on Lake Erie. In a decisive battle near Put-in Bay, Perry's fleet engaged and defeated a British squadron. His famous dispatch, "We have met the enemy and they are ours," resonated throughout the nation. Perry's victory gave the Americans control of Lake Erie and opened the way for a counter-offensive into Upper Canada. American forces, led by General William Henry Harrison, went on to defeat a combined British and Native American force at the Battle of the Thames. This battle, a resounding American victory, resulted in the death of Tecumseh, the charismatic Shawnee leader who had united many tribes against American expansion. The Battle of the Thames marked a turning point in the war. The death of Tecumseh dealt a severe blow to the Native American alliance with the British and significantly weakened their resistance in the Northwest. The American victory also restored some of the military prestige lost in the early defeats and set the stage for further advances in 1814. The year 1814 saw the war escalate dramatically. With Napoleon defeated in Europe, Britain was free to turn its full attention to the American conflict. British reinforcements poured into Canada, and a new offensive strategy emerged. The British planned to strike at the heart of the United States, hoping to capture key cities and force a quick end to the war. In August 1814, a British force landed in the Chesapeake Bay and marched on Washington, D.C. The American militia, hastily assembled and poorly led, offered little resistance. The British entered the capital and proceeded to burn many government buildings, including the White House and the Capitol. The burning of Washington was a national humiliation for the United States, but it did not break the American spirit. The British, after their symbolic victory, turned their attention to Baltimore, a strategically important port city. However, Baltimore was heavily fortified and defended by a determined American force. The British bombardment of Fort McHenry, a key defense point in Baltimore Harbor, was met with fierce resistance. The American flag flying defiantly over the fort throughout the night-long bombardment inspired Francis Scott Key, a young lawyer held captive on a British ship, to pen the words that would become the national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner. The British, unable to capture Baltimore, were forced to withdraw. With their northern offensive stalled, the British turned their attention southward. They aimed to seize New Orleans, a strategically important port city controlling access to the Mississippi River and its vast hinterland. The British believed that capturing New Orleans would give them leverage in the peace negotiations and potentially allow them to carve out a pro-British territory in the American South. The defense of New Orleans was entrusted to Andrew Jackson, a charismatic and ruthless general who had gained fame for his victories against the Creek Indians in the War of 1812. Jackson, known for his fiery temper and his unwavering determination, rallied his troops and the city's inhabitants to prepare for the British assault. The British, confident in their superior numbers and training, launched a frontal assault on the American positions on January 8, 1815. What they hadn't anticipated was the effectiveness of the American defenses and the tenacity of the American defenders. The British attack was met with a devastating barrage of artillery and rifle fire. The Battle of New Orleans was a decisive American victory. The British suffered heavy casualties and were forced to retreat, abandoning their hopes of capturing the city. The victory, coming just weeks after the signing of the Treaty of Ghent, though technically fought after the war had officially ended, cemented Andrew Jackson's status as a national hero and bolstered American pride. The War of 1812, marked by early defeats, concluded triumphantly. Victories at Baltimore and New Orleans instilled national unity. The war was crucial in forging American identity. It had profound implications for US-British relations. The Treaty of Ghent ended British ambitions over the US. The war secured American independence and fueled expansion. It had a lasting impact on North America's political landscape, strengthened nationalism and fueled westward expansion. The War of 1812 marked a turning point in American history. James Madison, the fourth President of the United States, led a divided nation into a controversial war. A brilliant political theorist, Madison was more comfortable in the realm of ideas than on the battlefield. Yet, circumstances thrust upon him the mantle of a wartime leader. His presidency was dominated by escalating tensions with Great Britain. Despite his reservations, Madison bowed to pressure and signed the Declaration of War in June 1812. The War of 1812 tested Madison's leadership and exposed his limitations as a wartime commander-in-chief. Tecumseh, the charismatic Shawnee chief, stands as one of the most tragic figures of the War of 1812. A brilliant military strategist and a passionate advocate for Native American unity, Tecumseh envisioned a pan-Indian confederacy capable of resisting American westward expansion. His vision, however, ultimately clashed with the relentless advance of American settlers and the ambitions of the young republic. Tecumseh understood that the survival of Native American tribes depended on their ability to set aside their traditional rivalries and unite against a common enemy. He tirelessly traveled throughout the Northwest Territory, forging alliances with various tribes and preaching a message of resistance against American encroachment. With the outbreak of the War of 1812, Tecumseh saw an opportunity to advance his cause. He allied his forces with the British, who promised to support Native American land claims in the Northwest Territory. Tecumseh's military acumen proved invaluable to the British in the early stages of the war. He played a key role in several British victories, including the capture of Fort Detroit. Tecumseh's dream of a Native American confederacy was shattered at the Battle of the Thames in 1813. Fighting alongside his British allies, Tecumseh was killed in a fierce battle that ended in an American victory. His death marked a turning point in the war, effectively ending the organized Native American resistance in the Northwest Territory and paving the way for further American expansion westward. Andrew Jackson, the fiery and controversial general, rose to prominence during the War of 1812, his name becoming synonymous with American frontier spirit and military tenacity. A veteran of the Revolutionary War and a self-made man from humble beginnings, Jackson possessed a fierce determination and a deep-seated distrust of the British. Prior to the War of 1812, Jackson had already made a name for himself in the Creek War, a brutal conflict against a faction of the Creek Nation that had allied with the British. Jackson's victory at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend broke the Creek resistance and solidified his reputation as a formidable military leader. With the outbreak of the War of 1812, Jackson was tasked with defending the Gulf Coast from British invasion. He orchestrated a brilliant defense of New Orleans, culminating in the decisive American victory in January 1815. The Battle of New Orleans, fought after the signing of the Treaty of Ghent, but before news of it reached America, made Jackson a national hero. Jackson's victory at New Orleans had far-reaching consequences. It not only secured the Mississippi Valley for the United States, but also catapulted Jackson into the national spotlight. His military exploits, coupled with his image as a man of the people, made him a popular figure and paved the way for his eventual presidency. Isaac Brock, a British Army officer, played a pivotal role in the War of 1812, his leadership proving crucial in thwarting the early American attempts to conquer Upper Canada. Known for his tactical brilliance and his ability to inspire his troops, Brock earned the moniker the Hero of Upper Canada. Brock, recognizing the strategic importance of securing Native American alliances, cultivated strong relationships with various tribes in the region, most notably with Tecumseh and his followers. He understood that the support of Native American warriors would be essential in repelling an American invasion. Brock's finest hour came early in the war when he led a combined British and Native American force to capture Fort Detroit. This victory, achieved with a smaller force and with minimal casualties, dealt a severe blow to American morale and emboldened the British in the early stages of the war. Tragically for the British, Brock's leadership was cut short at the Battle of Queenston Heights in October 1812. He was killed leading a charge against an American position, a loss that deeply saddened his troops and deprived the British of their most capable commander in Upper Canada. Despite his untimely death, Brock's legacy lived on, his name forever etched in Canadian history as a symbol of courage and determination. The War of 1812 placed many Native American tribes in a precarious position. Their ancestral lands became battlegrounds in a conflict not of their making. Native American leaders had to choose their allegiances carefully. Some tribes, like the Shawnee, allied with the British. The British promised to protect Native American lands. Other tribes, like the Creek Nation, were internally divided. Factions led by William McIntosh favored accommodation while others resisted. The decision of which side to support was complex. The War of 1812 was a struggle for their very existence. Amidst the War of 1812, Tecumseh sought to unite Native American tribes into a powerful confederacy to resist American expansion. He believed unity was essential for survival. Tecumseh envisioned a pan-Indian confederacy with shared territory and traditional laws. This confederacy aimed to negotiate with the US on equal terms. His message resonated with tribes facing broken treaties and pressure from settlers. Tecumseh's death in 1813 ended the dream of unity, leaving tribes vulnerable. The Northwest Territory, encompassing present-day states like Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois, became a crucial battleground in the War of 1812. For Native American tribes in the region, the war was not about abstract political principles, but a desperate struggle for survival against an encroaching power determined to seize their ancestral lands. The British, eager to exploit any advantage against the Americans, actively courted Native American alliances, promising to protect their lands and autonomy in exchange for their military support. Native American warriors, skilled in the art of woodland warfare, proved to be valuable allies to the British, particularly in the early stages of the war. The war in the Northwest was characterized by its brutality and its devastating impact on Native American communities. Villages were burned, crops destroyed, and countless lives lost in the fighting. The conflict exacerbated existing tensions between tribes, as some sided with the British, while others remained neutral or even allied with the Americans. The American victory at the Battle of the Thames in 1813, which resulted in the death of Tecumseh, marked a turning point in the war in the Northwest. With their most charismatic leader gone and the British unable to provide them with adequate support, Native American resistance crumbled. The war, for all intents and purposes, sealed the fate of Native American tribes in the region, paving the way for their eventual removal to lands further west. The War of 1812 had a profound impact on Native American tribes in the Northwest Territory. British promises to protect their lands were shattered. The Treaty of Ghent abandoned Native American allies. American settlers poured into the Northwest Territory. Treaties forced tribes to cede vast tracts of land. The War of 1812 marked a dark chapter in American-Indian relations. Broken promises and forced displacement became recurring themes. By 1814, the War of 1812 had reached a stalemate. Neither side had a decisive advantage. The American invasion of Canada stalled. The burning of Washington, D.C. was symbolic, but didn't change the war's balance. American victories showed resilience. The war became costly and prolonged. Both economies suffered. By late 1814, peace talks began. Peace negotiations between the United States and Great Britain commenced in Ghent, Belgium, in August 1814. The American delegation, led by John Quincy Adams, Henry Clay, and Albert Gallatin, arrived with a list of grievances and demands. The negotiations were protracted and often tense. The Treaty of Ghent, signed on December 24, 1814, restored pre-war boundaries. News of the treaty reached the United States in February 1815, just weeks after the American victory at New Orleans. The Treaty of Ghent marked the beginning of a new chapter in Anglo-American relations. While the Treaty of Ghent officially ended hostilities between the United States and Great Britain, it left many underlying issues unresolved. Impressment, neutral rights, and trade restrictions remained potential flashpoints. Impressment faded as the Royal Navy's needs declined, but it remained a point of contention. The War of 1812 exposed American vulnerabilities, highlighting the need for national unity and a robust federal government. The Treaty of Ghent laid the groundwork for a more cooperative relationship between the United States and Great Britain. The Treaty of Ghent, while ending the war between the United States and Great Britain, made no provisions for the Native American nations that had allied with the British. The treaty's silence on Native American land claims and their future status left them in a precarious position, their sacrifices largely ignored in the rush to restore peace. The British, having secured their own interests, abandoned their Native American allies to their fate. The Americans, emboldened by their victory and no longer constrained by the British presence, were determined to assert their dominance over the territories they had fought to control. The war's aftermath saw a wave of treaty negotiations between the United States and various Native American nations, primarily in the Northwest Territory. These treaties, often signed under duress and with the threat of further military action looming, resulted in significant land cessions and the further displacement of Native American communities. The War of 1812 marked a turning point in the relationship between the United States and Native American nations. The war shattered any illusions of peaceful coexistence and ushered in an era of aggressive westward expansion that would have devastating consequences for Native American tribes. The war's legacy for Native Americans was one of broken promises, forced removals, and the relentless erosion of their traditional ways of life. The War of 1812, often overshadowed by the American Revolution, was pivotal for the United States. It tested the young republic's resolve, exposing vulnerabilities but revealing strength and determination. The Treaty of Ghent ended the war without territorial changes, ushering in peace and cooperation with Britain. This allowed the US to focus on westward expansion. The war strengthened national unity and identity, paving the way for new leaders and growth. The War of 1812 marked the US coming of age, securing its independence and destiny as a continental power. The War of 1812, though often overshadowed, has left an enduring legacy shaping the national narrative and relationships. Heroes like Andrew Jackson and Isaac Brock are celebrated, their exploits etched in history. The war also highlights the complex relationship between the United States and Native American tribes. For Native Americans, it was a struggle for survival against an encroaching power. Despite its short duration, the War of 1812 had a lasting impact on North America's political and social landscape. It solidified American independence and shaped relationships for generations.